Welcome to FOXSOUL's Black Report. This is the space where we bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi.
Hey, loved ones, I'm Nielle.
All right, coming up on today's report, President Biden's infrastructure deal is at his desk. The Congressional Black Caucus is moving to help pass the Build Back Better plan. And former President Barack Obama is back on the world stage.
We have an update of today's proceedings of the 3 men accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery. And Congress is celebrating hip-hop this month. We'll tell you why and how.
Can't wait to hear about that, Demi. Soulmates, we have that and so much more. You know why? Because it's our voice. It's our truth. So let's get to it.
Good evening, Soulmates. I hope you are enjoying this Monday. Our top story, 6 progressive Democrats and 13 Republicans both went against their own party lines in a vote on a $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure deal. The White House, it was passed by the House 228 to 206. Now, some of the provisions, including in this massive package, are proposals for free preschool for kids ages 3 and 4, boosts to Pell Grant funding, healthcare expansions, and billions for affordable housing. As part of the deal, the different factions agreed upon a vote for a rule that sets up a later vote on the larger social spending package, which would advance key parts of the president's legislative agenda. The Hill is reporting on this story. Here's the thing. Let's talk about the Democrats, the progressive Democrats who chose to vote against this. Among the names, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So I saw a lot of criticism over the weekend. The criticism was, hey, look, we need to pass this infrastructure deal. A lot of criticism. We need to pass this infrastructure deal. And that means it's unacceptable for those lawmakers to vote against it. The progressive lawmakers who chose to vote against it are saying, hold on, it's not that easy. They are saying the Build Back Better plan, the bigger deal, is being held up by Republicans and also by a couple, by some Democrats. And they're saying if we don't force a vote, that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to force a vote first on the Build Back Better plan, trying to force a vote there, and then later feel free to pass the infrastructure bill, because the fear is, and the fear from a lot of political pundits, not even necessarily a fear from pundits, but the expectation is that this is passed, making, most lawmakers right now happy, but the Build Back Better plan is still a complete non-starter.
I mean, there is a lot of fear to be had. This was so ballsy of them to do, but I love it also at the same time because, Brooke, like you said, if they go ahead and do one without the other, we might not get anything. We might not get all that we're looking for. And so there was an NBC reporter, and I tried to get her name. I forgot her name, but she said something very powerful about this today. And she said that the reason why this was so important is because you think about the Democratic Party. Maybe the Democratic Party looks like those 6 Democrats who decided to go against the grain, so to speak. Maybe that is what the Democratic Party is going to look like going forward. Maybe we are, people of color, women of color. Maybe we are what the Democratic Party actually is. We represent the Democratic Party, the squad, as they're called. And maybe it's not the same white people that you thought that the Democratic Party was. And so I'm happy that they took a stance. Again, very ballsy, very nervous about this. But also, I really like it. And I'm happy that they stood their ground and fight for what they believe in.
Finally, something is going to the president's desk. So this bill is going there. He's going to sign it. And one of the things that I was happy about with this bill is the Pell Grants, because we know that Pell Grants fund HBCU students. They fund HBCUs. So this was a big deal for the Black community as it relates to HBCUs, and also a win for the Congressional Black Caucus.
At the end of the day, you see something that's going to be on this bill, clean drinking water. We saw what happened in Flint, Michigan, what it did to the Black community, what it did to people of color there. We also see the roads being taken care of. But I think part of the question is people are saying, why are most people saying this is already going to be paid for when it really isn't? Some people are concerned like, okay, who's going to end up paying for this at the end of the day? It's going to be the American people, and I think that's a big concern as well.
Yeah, and those 6 Democrats, they do have a valid point, which takes us to our next story. The $1.75 trillion framework agreement for President Biden's Build Back Better plan could represent a significant victory for Black lawmakers who have been adamant that promises made to the Black community be kept by the White House. Now, the framework included key priorities of Congressional Black Caucus's plan, including funding HBCUs, an increased child tax credit, affordable housing, universal child care, and pre-K and Medicare expansion. Now, CBC Chairwoman Joyce Beatty, in remarks before the unveiling of the framework, suggested Biden knew that he had to deliver for the CBC, which has been very disappointed in the lack of progress on key issues such as voting rights and police reform. So, this is going to be a back and forth. But on Friday, soulmates, Chairwoman Joyce Beatty, while those 6 lawmakers, the progressives, were meeting, she was standing outside of their office trying to go in and kind of lobby them to come on board. Even though it didn't happen, she knew that that would be critical as they move forward with this Build Back Better plan. So, the CBC is trying to make waves because many of those people that were in that room are members of the Congressional Black Caucus. They finally let her come in the room. They finally let her say her piece. But those 6 are going to be crucial as they move the next part of this policy to the president's desk.
Something very powerful that NAACP President and CEO Derek Johnson said. Also, he said that we can at the same time celebrate the accomplishments, celebrate that we're moving forward, celebrate, hey, good things are happening. But also, his words were also raised concerns with the lack of traction around different policy issues. And the way that I took that is we can celebrate that we're making some baby steps, but also keep your foot on the government's neck at the same time. And that's how I received that. Going back to, politics are give and take. We talk about every day about Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema standing on ceremony about what they believe in, and they're not budging on things that they're passionate about, and they stand firm. So also just, this is kind of going backtrack to the squad, the first story. Hey, if they want to stand firm on that, then let's see how it turns out.
Well, I do feel at the end of the day, people are going to like things in it. Other people are not going to like things in it. But how do you find that a happy medium that's going to benefit the country? Because at the end of the day, if they don't push it through, how many people is it going to affect? And that's what we need to be concerned about.
The big tell is where this goes. Right. We're talking about it now. The big tell is where this goes, what happens with the vote on this, what happens in the Senate on this. That's the big tell. And until then, it's really just everybody, standing their ground, saying this is what my constituents want me to do, need me to do. This is what I believe is best. And we're going to soon at least figure out who was right.
Right.
If I can add one more thing into this too. Neil, you listed all of the pieces that'll happen with this, but $200 million will go specifically to research capability building. And so at first it just sounds like 3 words just put together. But when I looked a little bit more in that, we have these HBCUs, Neil, like you were saying, that don't know what to do. They get money in, but they don't even know what to do with the money. They don't know where to divide the money and where it should go to. So research capability building, pretty much what that is the research to figure out how to make things better. So that's $200 million going into strategizing on what we should do to get all this, when we get this money, where does it go to? What do we do with it next? So I thought that was really important to add, and I'm really excited to see how it goes as well. All right, so our next story here, conservative lawmakers in Ohio introduced a copycat Texas abortion restriction last week that goes even further than the highly controversial measure from the Lone Star State. Rather than impacting abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy, this law aims to prohibit them at any stage of pregnancy. Yes, you heard that right. The proposed legislation is titled the 2363 Act, and that's for the 2,363 children who were lost to abortion every day in the United States, according to that bill. Now, in 2018, 591 abortions were performed, according to a report from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which comes out to around 1,698 abortions performed each day. I'm sure everyone saw this on their timeline, was enraged about this, because I want to make sure that it's clear as well that this bill will ban abortions, like I said, and also a $10,000 bounty to anyone who provides care. And so immediately when I thought about this was because they're trying to get so strict here, is that going to start meaning for the Plan B pill morning after? Because technically, one can argue that the Plan B pill is, stopping something, and so I'm just wondering how far is this going to go? Because, we talk about Texas, but now Ohio, I'm from Chicago, like that's close by. I'm just wondering what other states are going to adopt something similar to this.
But just to be fair, because that was kind of like, I just want to clear that up because I think we should, but the Plan B pill is not comparable to an abortion pill. It's more comparable to a very serious condom. So the difference is a woman is not pregnant for a Plan B pill to work. Once a woman is pregnant, you can take as many Plan B pills and it would never work. And so, but that is something that's kind of like a false narrative that you often hear when you talk about the abortion pill, when you talk about, a chemical abortion, when you talk about like an actual surgical abortion, they're comparing it to that. That was a lot of the criticism when it comes to certain states not allowing them to be sold to certain people under a certain age. Right. They're locked behind the pharmacy desk in certain areas. But I always want to clear that up because, I think that's important. That is something that you're going to hear, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And now this pushes everything back to all eyes on the Supreme Court and why, this is a good civics 101 lesson about how federal mandate is important, because a lot of times states have the opportunity to do things like this. And then at this point, this conversation, women are impacted by this. And if the Supreme Court rules the way in the same vein of Roe versus Wade, it would kind of domino affect all of these other state laws.
You think about what's going on in Texas and how people feel about that. We've talked about it on this show for numerous times now, right? Now, for Ohio to want to do the same thing, what is that saying about a woman's rights? And then what is that saying about how people think in this country? How are they going to benefit from that? So can you guys break that down for our soulmates? How are they benefiting from creating something like this? Because to me, you're taking away your rights. And that's why most of the time I sit back and let you guys speak on it. But I'm like, how could another state want to consider this?
Every state that has been kind of moving this way, every district, every area that has been sort of moving in this direction are basically, setting up kind of what both Demi and Niele kind of pointed to, are basically setting up not even necessarily their own Supreme Court fight, but a domino effect, an umbrella decision based on one of the states, getting to the Supreme Court and winning their battle, and that new constitutional decision affecting, not constitutional, but that new Supreme Court, decision affecting all of the other states who were right there and ready with their own laws that weren't necessarily enforceable until that decision.
The other thing is one concern, Romeo, and I'm so happy that you wanted to ask that question because it is a very important question as a man. Sometimes men don't really understand what is the big idea here, or people just don't understand the big idea. So another concern was that abortions harm women. And so to that, I say we have Black women, the amount of death and pain that we go through just to give birth. I feel like we should put more emphasis on Black women giving birth. If we care so much about what women do with their bodies and their children, we should put more emphasis in Black women giving birth versus an abortion and someone making a personal decision versus like, you could die giving birth. And I feel like we should put more emphasis on that versus abortions right now. But I do want to clear up that abortions can have long-term effects as well in women. I don't want to make it seem like there cannot be long-term effects of abortions because they can be harmful as well.
And Romeo, to your point, if we're just being honest about the conversation, most of these abortion laws are coming out of white Republican male lawmakers and evangelicals, which are predominantly white organizations and houses of religion. So it's really interesting how this country has a long history of white men wanting to control people of color in women's bodies. It's history. It's in the books.
Well, I really appreciate y'all breaking that down for our soulmates and for me as well. All right, former President Obama was back on the world stage today expressing international climate progress at the COP26 Climate Summit today, but warned that we are nowhere near where we need to be yet.
Meaningful progress has been made since Paris. And the agreements made here in Glasgow, thanks to so many of you, including my friend John Kerry here, who is tireless, and his team. Thanks to your efforts here in Glasgow, we see the promise of further progress.
The 44th president told those gathered at the United Nations Summit that we have not done nearly enough to address this crisis. And he had no problem speaking about Trump on the situation,
he
too.
took some shots.
Man, he took some great shots. And the point is, we knew we had a long way to go. We understand that. We have to put in work. And I think about that more than ever, because when I was young growing up, I didn't think about the future like that, right? But maybe it wasn't as bad as it is now. But now having a son, and what if he wants to have a family? So now you have to start thinking that way. And the way he was going in on him, just saying, look, man, this guy set us back. The way he handled, the way he ignored the situation really set us back, and now they have to rebuild those relationships across the country and across the world.
And that's really what it's about, because he's on this world stage essentially saying we need everybody, more than 200 governments across our world. You know, he's speaking to these leaders saying we need everybody to work together in order to kind of try and reverse, while we have the time, the damage that we're doing to our planet. And then he's saying, look, I have to acknowledge that our country hasn't been so good. I think he called it embarrassing.
Right.
He called, I think the quote was Donald Trump's inaction on climate change over the past 4 years. And so I guess, he's setting up, he didn't want people to say, well, wait a minute. What is it, the call's coming from inside the house? So he kind of was beating people to that, essentially, at least. I think it's always interesting to see when he speaks out, what he speaks out about. It's interesting to see him on a global stage this morning. This was massive news, just even the preparations of him getting ready to speak. So many people were looking to this conversation, and it appears he didn't disappoint many who were excited to hear him speak, right?
I just got to be honest. I'm sorry, real quick. I want to say I was in the car listening to it before I walked up on the air, right?
Yeah.
And just to hear him speak, just to hear his voice.
It was powerful.
It was.
Yeah, I think the Biden administration did. It was a smart move, and John Kerry to second it to make sure Obama is still well received and well loved around the world. So just for him to go, and even for the Black community, he still has a presence here in our community. So him speaking about, climate change and the importance of these things, it definitely has impact. And I want to also acknowledge one of the youngest state assembly members here in the state of California. Isaac Bryan is there representing the state, and I just think that's huge. He's young, he's unapologetic, and he's there on the world stage as well, repping the state of California.
Let's move on to our next story here, moving to more international news. The United States is now officially advising any of its citizens and all non-emergency U.S. government employees and their families who are in Ethiopia to leave. The quote is, as soon as possible, due to deteriorating security conditions. So CBS reporting a security alert posted Friday by the U.S. Embassy is warning Americans to depart the country without delay. It also offered assistance in getting air travel from the international airport in the area. So here's a report from CNN just hours ago that Ethiopia appears to be detaining people based on ethnicity. This is actually a warning from the Human Rights Commission.
I think about one of the biggest concerns right now is humanitarian aid. Over 900,000 people that need that aid that they can't even get to with all the things that are going on. So, we talk about what happens in Haiti now, we're talking about here. We have issues all across the world right now, and we somehow need to come together and try and help each other. But it is very, very sad what's going on.
I mean, all of this, you guys, in the middle, we're technically still fighting a pandemic right now. And it's just really sad to see that this is going on in our country and in other countries as well. And Romeo, like you said, we need to all come together to try to help out our people here and across the country.
Also, I think a big part of this conversation is, not really any Western countries have an amazing track record when it comes to East African countries whatsoever. And I mean, the argument could be made for the continent as a whole, but specifically, Rwanda, the genocide in Rwanda was not that long ago whatsoever. Right. And I think that on one end, you say something horrible is happening. This is what, so many people focused on human rights are acknowledging, hey, something horrible is happening. You got to protect everyone from everyone's government has to protect their citizens. But also, you do want to make sure that people in need who live in the country aren't ignored when a country with a higher power, with bigger abilities can possibly do something. And so I think that's right now is what everyone is looking to.
Right. And when we read these types of stories, I tend to like to read the Al Jazeera and some of the world publications versus just things here locally, because a lot of times when you dig a little deeper into the stories, they have a totally different perspective of the headlines that we're getting here in the United States.